Hi everybody, welcome back to Mando Lessons. This is part 2 in a series on picking tunes to put into sets, combining a couple tunes into medleys, when to do it, how to do it, all that sort of thing. In part 1, I talked about some different options, some different sort of standards within different traditions, like playing what you do if you're playing in an old time jam or what you do if you're playing in an Irish session. So if you want to check that out, part 1, I'll have a link in the description. In part 2, I'm just going to go through a couple different examples. In part 1, I went through kind of using tunes, using two reels, for example. I'm using lessons that I've made of fiddle tunes on my website. In part 1, I did sort of using an Irish reel into another Irish reel and keeping the energy steady. Also, using a jig, which is a little more mellow usually than reels, into a reel, and sort of showing how that increased the energy. And then I went the other direction and played a reel into a jig, and the energy level comes down, which I try to avoid, especially when playing for dances, or just trying to keep the energy level up, which I think can be a helpful thing in a performance or in a dance setting. Keeping energy high and not making people turn into, whether they're dancers or audience members, not either putting them to sleep or making them fall into a puddle on the floor. So in this section, I just want to talk about a few general guidelines that I use. And again, I talked about in the first lesson, my sort of rules or guidelines for myself may not apply to you or the kind of music you like to hear. So ultimately, trust your ear, do what people around you are doing. Take notice of sort of the sets that are happening in the musical situations you find yourself in. And I'll throw out a few things that I and a lot of people I know use as common sort of ways to think about putting tunes together. So one way is to change keys. Play one tune in, for example, D, like the Bag of Spuds, which there's a lesson for. All the tunes I'm naming, there will be a lesson on the website, as long as I can keep them all straight in my brain. So the Bag of Spuds in the key of D into John Stenson's in the key of A is a great combination. They're both Irish tunes, they're both reels, and the first tune is in the key of D and the second tune is in the key of A. It's a fairly steady energy level. It goes a little bit up just because A is often a higher pitched key. You're often playing more on the A and E strings than Bag of Spuds, which is more on the D and A strings. So that increase in pitch kind of brings a little more energy into the tune. So switching keys is a good thing to try out. And what I would recommend is just trying a bunch of different, taking note of what keys tunes you like to play are in, and then trying out different combinations, seeing what you like to hear. A general thing that I think about for my own music is I'll throw out a little bit of theory, going up clockwise on the circle of fifths. So, for example, going from the key of C to the key of G, or the key of G to the key of D, or D to A, or A to E. And so what that's doing in a sort of non-theoretical is, the theoretical sense, is if you're playing in the key of G, you got this G string right here. And then you move to the key of D, one string over. Or if you're in the key of D and you're looking for a tune that'll bring the energy up, try going to A, next string higher from D. So you have G, D, A, E. That's a little chunk of the circle of, excuse me, I dropped my pick. That's a little chunk of the circle of fifths right under your fingers. G, D, A, E. So if you're in the key of D and saying, oh man, what's a great tune that will bring the energy up a little bit, try going to the key of A. Or if you're in A, the next higher string is E. Try going to a tune in E. So that's something that I use as kind of and there's some tunes where you go from A to D and, kind of backwards down the circle of fifths, and it'll work. Sometimes it'll bring the energy level down, not always. It really depends on a tune-by-tune basis. So I'll play the Bag of Spuds into John Stenson's again, like I did in the first part, and then I'll play it the other way around and sort of see see what it sounds like and see if you prefer one way or the other. So here's Bag of Spuds. I may abbreviate it a little bit just to keep the tune shorter. The video shorter. B part. Other tune. In there for the sake of time. But so Bag of Spuds is a lot on those D and A strings, and then going to the key of A and John Stenson's, where we really switch up to a lot of A and E strings. Brings the pitch up, brings the energy level up a little bit. Going the other direction. Switching tunes, it's not a bad switch by any means. It just kind of brings the energy level down ever so slightly, in my opinion. You might sort of hear other things in that switch. So my go-to, if I'm playing for a dance and I want to keep bringing the energy up, I might go from D to A rather than A to D. But at the same time, if I want to, if the energy is really high and I just want to bring it down for a little bit and then maybe go back up later, I might play that John Stenson's in A into Bag of Spuds in D and just bring it down for a little bit. Give the dancers a break. Another thing to do is playing let's see. Okay, so another example is to play a tune, both tunes in the same key, but the second tune starts on a different chord. So an example, let's use Bag of Spuds again for the first tune, key of D, nice Irish tune. And then we're going to go into the Virginia, which is also an Irish tune in the key of D, but it starts on a G chord. So it starts on a G chord. Bag of Spuds and a lot of tunes will start in the key of D on a D chord. This tune is in the key of D, but starts on a G chord. So the switch sounds like this. B part. So that switch right there, I abbreviated kind of half A, half B into the Virginia. That switch, they're both in the key of D, but the Virginia starts on a G chord. It's just a little something different. Sometimes if the tunes are too similar, if they're both in D and they both sound really similar, then it can be hard for the listener to know that they're even different tunes. So that can be nice if you're looking for a really steady energy level and you're just sort of looking to change the tune for your own enjoyment. But if you really want to do something that the audience will notice, try switching keys or starting a tune on a different chord. Another thing to do is to go from a major tune to a minor tune. So I'll use Bag of Spuds again as a D major tune, and then I'll go into Julia Delaney's, also on the website, also a great tune, which is in D minor or D Mixolydian. So we're going from D major to sorry, it's not Mixolydian. I believe it's Dorian. My notes are telling me lies. I have no one to blame but myself for that. So the switch sounds like this. part. Switch. So that kind of goes from oversimplified, like a happy sound, to a sad sound, major to minor. That's another great tool to use. So if you kind of have cataloged in your head, like, oh, this tune's in D major, this tune's in D minor, might be a nice switch. Let's see, what else do I do here? In the last lesson, I did, if you want to hear an example of a jig to a reel and a reel to a jig, that's in part 1. Another thing to do is play around with whether your tunes, whether they're kind of a continuous flow from the end of the B part of one into the A part of another, or if you want a nice kind of hard break and have a little space and add a little kind of anticipation there. So using Bag of Spuds in the Virginia, it's a very smooth switch. B part. B again. Into the Virginia. Etc. The tune just kind of keeps flowing right along, versus you could put kind of a cut short. You could cut short Bag of Spuds and go into John Stenson's and really kind of give some space. It's a little like, oh, what's about to happen? Then John Stenson starts and it kind of brings up the energy level. So here's an example of that. B part. Here we go. So I kind of stopped the B part early. Then I put a pause in and switch to the new tune. You can also put less of a pause. Let's see. So play around with how much of the tune you're either leaving out, or maybe sometimes it's just leaving out pickup notes off of the second tune, kind of diving right into the top of the first bar on the second tune that gives that little bit of space. So play around with the amount of space you have between the end of the A and the beginning of the B. Sorry, the end of the first tune and the beginning of the second tune. And that's another sort of creative moment where you can try some things out and see what you like the sound of. So those are some examples. If you have other things that you like to do for creating medleys of tunes, by all means leave them in the comments. Let me know what you like to do. I'd love to hear some more examples of sets you like to make. You name it. And just what I really like doing is trying things out. Sometimes I get stuck in my head of like, oh, tunes from D to A really work well. And it makes me not want to try going from, F to D or something a little less logical, not right along that circle of fifths, or not changing across a string, going from something on the D string to the A string, something like that. And, just try everything, and you'll start to sort of figure out what works for you and what you appreciate, and what you like to hear. And on your favorite records, just figure out what key they're playing one tune in, and if you really hear a switch you like, and you're like, yeah, I love that switch, figure out what key the first tune's in and what key the second tune's in, and just sort of take a closer listen to hear what it is you like to hear. Hope that helps. Hope that answers some questions, and thanks so much for watching. If you like, there's a couple ways to donate over at the website, but it's not required at all. The lessons are free if you choose them to be. So I hope to see you again soon. Lots more lessons over at mandolessons.com. And have a great time. Make up some nice sets and tell me about them. All right, thanks. Bye-bye.